Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the official picks on the UFC Saudi Arabia card. And let me tell you, this card is terrible. From a picks perspective, from a betting perspective, this card is terrible because there's been so many cancellations, so many short notice replacements, so many people pulling out. Kelvin Gastelum switches up the weight class on 2 days' notice. What is going on with this card? We are looking bleak right now. 11 fights scheduled. But either way, we're going to go through. We're going to give you our gun to head. Cartel is waterboarding you saying, give me an official pick. We're going to do that for every single fight on the card. Let's go down to the first fight of the night, which isn't even a UFC fight. So technically, we only got 10 UFC fights. First fight of the night, road to the UFC tournament bout right here. Zhao Long and Chang Ho Lee. Don't like either guy, to be honest, but I do think Chang Ho Lee has a little bit more finishing upside. We'll see how his wrestling holds up if Zhao Long elects to try to take this fight to the ground. But essentially, a contract is on the line, so I don't know if either guy's going to fight differently. But Chang Ho Lee has a little bit more pop in his shots. I think his defensive wrestling is okay. He can reverse position if he gets taken down, find his way back up to the feet. Zhao Long, just kind of sloppy striking to me. I think he throws a lot of volume, but it is a little bit sloppy, and I think Chang Ho Lee could probably find the openings, land some big shots, maybe knock him out, or just land the more impactful shots throughout the fight. So I'm going to go with Chang Ho Lee to get the win and a UFC contract and put a stamp on that road to the UFC tournament that has lasted forever. We move on. Magomed Gadzhiyasulov and Brandon Ribeiro. Now, this Gadzhiyasulov dude, I don't think he's really anything special, but I don't think it takes anything super special to beat Brandon Ribeiro. The only way that Ribeiro wins this fight is if Gadzhiyasulov elects to get into a brawl with Brandon Ribeiro, because Brandon Ribeiro, he's got big power, he's got a big, long reach, and he can connect. He's going to put you out. But I think if Magomed has any type of brain, any type of strategy, he takes this guy to the ground and beats him up there. Now, if he can't do that and he's forced to strike with him, then it's probably going to go downhill. Not that Magomed is some terrible striker, but I don't think he has the power to really get the respect from Ribeiro, and that's where it could be a problem. But considering his name is Magomed and his last name ends in an OV, and from the film that we've watched, he can take the fight to the ground if he needs to. And I think he should need to do that here. He will do it. I will take Magomed Gadzhiyasulov for the pick. Up the card, we got Kyung Ho Kang taking on Muin Gafurov. Gafurov really ain't that good. He really ain't. I watch his fights. He's not very good. I think the only reason that he's like the favorite in this spot is because Kyung Ho Kang is pretty old. And Kyung Ho Kang is not really a big, potent finisher. I don't think he has a single knockout on his professional record. More of a club and sub type guy, or he can find his way to the back and sink in a rear naked choke. I think Gafurov probably pressures him a bunch, throws a bunch of big wild hooks that have little to no intention of landing. They're just kind of thrown out there for setups to get his takedowns. He will get the takedowns, but I don't think it's going to be a point where he gets on top of him and he's able to hold him there for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. So he's going to have some cardio to hang on and get a win against Kyung Ho Kang. And that's where I kind of question his ability to get this win. Because what does he do? He just throws wild punches and then he'll fall into a takedown. But does he really land any of those big punches? Does he hurt guys in there? Not that he's really shown. So I'm going to go with Kyung Ho Kang because I think he's the more technical striker. I think he could probably throw a little bit more volume. I think his gas tank is a little bit better. And if he gets taken down, I think he can get back up, or he could reverse a position, maybe find his way on the back, and maybe find a sub. But Gafurov's tough. I think this fight probably goes to a decision, and it's probably 29-28 either way. And maybe just because his last name ends in an OV, he gets the judge's decision. But I am going to go with Kyung Ho Kang because I think he is the better overall fighter. Now, does that mean anything? Because he could still lose. Probably not. But he is the better fighter, so I will take him. Renat Fakhretdinov, Nicholas Dalby. Fakhretdinov, big favorite here against Dalby. Dalby's almost 40, but he's in the prime of his peak physical career. Why? Because this guy's mind is set right. He's got a big challenge here because this is a 3-rounder. And normally, Renat Fakhretdinov has the ability to beat anybody in the first round because he has very, very explosive grappling. He'll shoot deep into the double legs, and he has some big power in round 1. Now, after round 1, that's where it gets dicey for Renat Fakhretdinov because then his striking becomes very sloppy, and Nicholas Dalby can probably take over at that point. But it might be too late because if Dalby doesn't take over within the first half of the second round, then he's probably down 2-0, and then he's got to find a finish in round 3. So it is a tough fight for Nicholas Dalby, but I don't think it's a fight that's not winnable because on the feet, I think he's the more technical striker. He might throw a little bit more volume, probably not as much power, but Dalby's very durable. He's never been knocked out in his long professional career. Never been knocked out, never been subbed. So Fakhretdinov better be ready to come in there with 3 rounds of cardio. Otherwise, Dalby's eventually going to turn the tables. For my pick, I am going to go with Dalby. And it is going out on a limb. We're hanging on to the tree branch. Maybe the cartel is going to put that bullet in our head. Because if Dalby loses, that's the results we're going to get. But I am going to go Dalby. Because I think this is a winnable fight for him. I don't think Fakhretdinov really is all that he's hyped up to be. You look at his wins in the UFC. Andre Michailidis got cut. Brian Battle took the fight on 7 days' notice. And he's not a good wrestler. It's a perfect matchup for Fakhretdinov. Then a win over Kevin Lee, who really had no business coming back to the UFC. And then a draw to Zaleski dos Santos. Now, Zaleski, everybody knows Zaleski, and they respect him. But Nicholas Dalby beat Zaleski. And I think Nicholas Dalby could do similar stuff to Zaleski. Maybe not hit as hard, but he's going to throw a lot more. And I think if he gets down onto his back, eventually he'll find his way back up, and then he can just continue to push the pace. So I'm going to go with Dalby, but it is also one of those where it could be a 29-28 decision, and they give it to the guy with the OV in his name. So that's the risk we're going to play here, but I am going with Dalby. Got Muhammad Naimov, Felipe Lima. So Lima takes this fight on short notice, probably about 4 or 5 days. This Lima kid is good. You watch his film, he looks like he would train with Khamzat Chimaev and that gym. He's from the All-Stars gym. He's got a crazy pace, a crazy wrestling game. The problem here is that he's a 135er, and he's taking this fight on short notice, fighting at 145. So if these guys were fighting in their normal weight classes, I think I'd go Felipe Lima. But Muhammad Naimov is kind of a big 145er, big, strong dude in there. And he kind of relies on that physical strength when he's in these grappling situations. Now, Naimov's not really a guy that's super hard to take down. But if he gets taken down, he usually reverses position and then has you up against the cage, and then you're in a bad spot. So I think Naimov holds a little bit more pop in his hands as well. He's not a terrible striker, but a guy that's really going to try to sit down on his punches. And, yeah, he knocked out Jamie Malarkey. Not the best thing. Yeah, I mean, that's not like something to get a trophy for nowadays. But he didn't drop Nathaniel Wood. He did get dropped by Nathaniel Wood as well. But the striking that I've seen from Felipe Lima doesn't really have great hands, but he does mix in his weapons a lot. A lot of kicks, a lot of knees. So that's going to help him here. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Naimov as a pick just because I think Lima is going to be a little bit too undersized because he's a guy that relies on this pace and this strength type of pressure. I don't know that it's going to really work against Naimov. I think maybe if he can implement the pace from early on, then he could start to take over as the fight goes on. But it's a 3-rounder. I think Naimov's tough enough to survive. He's never been finished. So I'll go with Naimov for a pick. Let's move on. Nasrat Haqparast, Jared Gordon. Now, I actually think Jared Gordon's getting counted out a little bit in this spot, but it doesn't mean I think he's going to win because Jared Gordon's a very solid overall fighter. And I could actually see him trying to mix in some type of wrestling in this fight against Nasrat because Nasrat, I think on the feet is just going to be a little bit sharper, a little bit faster, a little bit more volume. But when I look at the stats on Jared Gordon, he keeps up the pace with every single one of his opponents as far as volume goes. So I don't know that Nasrat's going to, put on a clinic where he puts up 120 compared to Jared Gordon's 60. But I do think every time that Nasrat lands, it's probably going to impact him a little bit more. And Jared Gordon throughout his career has not been the most durable guy. Now, Nasrat has been knocked out like once, and I think it was Drew Dober. So you can kind of write that one off because Drew Dober hits like a truck, and Jared Gordon hits nowhere near the power that Drew Dober has. So I think if they're going to slug it out on the feet, Nasrat's going to hit a little bit harder, maybe edge him a little bit more in volume. And Jared Gordon is a guy that'll throw you up against the cage just to kind of control you and implement his strength, but it's not really scoring points nowadays. Holding guys up against the cage for a minute or 2 minutes doesn't really do anything in the eyes of the judges. So if this fight goes to a decision, I see Nasrat landing the bigger punches and hurting Jared Gordon a little bit more throughout the fight. So Nasrat is the pick. To the main card, we got Johnny Walker, Volkan Oezdemir. Now, if you watched my full card breakdown, in-depth breakdown on the Double Leg YouTube channel, me and my boy the Parlay, we're on opposite sides here. He's got Johnny Walker, I got Volkan Oezdemir. And it was a pretty good debate we had. Now, I think Johnny Walker, he's a fan favorite. Everybody loves him. And usually, when you're a fan favorite and everybody loves you, people are going to pick you. But when I look at Johnny Walker's game, I just don't see anything other than him being 6'6", tall, long, and explosive. That's all he is. As far as his actual skills are, they're not there. This guy he doesn't even use his length for one. It's not like he sticks the jab, stays to the outside, and it's tough to get on the inside with him. He has no setups to his striking. He doesn't pump a jab and then go 1-1-2. Never does that. He might sit from the outside and throw a leg kick, but it's not followed up with anything. It's just leg kick, reset, move around, flying knee. It is unpredictable and it's tough to deal with. But I think Volkan Oezdemir is a world-class kickboxer who has knockout power, and Johnny Walker does not have a good chin. He's been knocked out 5 times in his professional career. Oezdemir, I trust his chin more. I trust his overall skill set a lot more. And I've just seen so many openings on the Johnny Walker side when I watch his film where he throws a right hand and then he's just completely squared up. And then he's just in terrible spots. He just consistently puts himself in really bad spots when he's striking with guys to get hit and to get hit very hard to the point where he's off balance and where he can't defend himself. And I think that's a reason why he's been knocked out so many times. So I'm going to go with Volkan Oezdemir. I actually think Volkan could probably get a wrestling game in here against Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker doesn't have a wrestling game. He has a decent jiu-jitsu game, but he doesn't have a wrestling game to go to. I mean, it's going to be tough to get a 6'6" guy down to the ground, but I don't think Volkan even needs that. So on the feet, I think Volkan's just a lot more pure, a lot more technical, a lot better timing, a lot better setups. So I'm going to go with Volkan. Move on. We got Shara Magomedov taking on the short notice Antonio Trocoli. The odds on the screen are definitely not correct because I think Shara is more like minus 650, like a big favorite. But Trocoli has a path. Like, as weird as it is to say, Trocoli has a path to win this fight because we know Shara doesn't really have much of a ground game at all. And that's all Antonio Trocoli has. That's the only thing he has, is the ability to get your back and submit you. Because on the feet, he's got nothing to offer on the feet. He's trash. He's been super inactive. All of his wins in the past, 5 years are against complete cans. So he's not a good fighter, But at the end of the day, he might only need a back take and a rear naked choke to win this fight. With all that said, there's still no way, if the cartel has a gun to my head and said, give me a pick, that I'm taking Antonio Trocoli. I'm taking Shara Magomedov for the pick. Even though he has flaws, with the short notice, with how bad Trocoli is on the feet, I think Shara Magomedov should probably win this fight. And he should probably win it by knockout. If he doesn't, I think that would be a big disappointment because Shara is a guy that the UFC obviously wants to promote. They needed him on this card because I don't think Shara Magomedov is even able to fight anywhere outside of like the Middle East just because of, his one eye. I don't think they can get that approved by commissions in like the US. So they needed him on this card. They found Trocoli, who's been booked countless times to fight in the UFC, hasn't yet. This is his UFC debut. Now he's got to take on the Pirate. I don't know. I mean, he's got the path, but Magomedov is definitely the pick. Move on. We got Kelvin Gastelum, Daniel Rodriguez. So I said at the top of the show, Kelvin Gastelum comes out and says he's not going to make 170. And apparently, Daniel Rodriguez offered a 180, and there was some type of miscommunication. I've seen both ways, where Gastelum offered 180 and then Rodriguez declined and then they made it 185, or Rodriguez offered 180 and then Gastelum declined, so they made it 185. Either way, this fight's going to be at 185. So once again, Kelvin Gastelum showing not really taking the diet seriously, nor his career, because he's 5'9". He has never had any business fighting at 185. But the ability that he has, the skills that he has, have gotten him to a point where he was once top 5 in the world at the middleweight division. At 170, maybe that works out well or better for him, but we really don't know because, maybe the welterweights are just a little bit more skilled and he can't really, a move down isn't always the answer. But at middleweight, it's a weight that he's fought at before, I see this fight kind of going one way. It's Kelvin Gastelum landing bigger punches, Daniel Rodriguez throwing a lot of volume but never really hurting Kelvin Gastelum because Kelvin Gastelum has a rock-solid chin, man. He's got a granite chin. He's taken so many shots. And Gastelum does have some wrestling upside. If Gastelum mixes in some takedowns here and there, he stays on the feet, he uses that granite chin, he throws some big bombs, lands a couple, I think he should win this fight. I don't think he necessarily knocks out Daniel Rodriguez because Kelvin Gastelum ain't knocked out anybody since Bisping in 2017. So I think that's a pretty hot take if you're taking Gastelum by KO. Not saying it's something that can't happen because Daniel Rodriguez is like 37 or 38. He's old, and he got knocked out his last fight. I don't think his chin is really as great as it once was. But I'm going to go Gastelum for the pick. I think this is probably a matchup that he can win. And even though he's really not taking his career serious at this point, I think he should still get a win here. Co-main event, Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Volkov. This is one I've gone back and forth on so many times because it seems like everyone and their mom is taking Sergey Pavlovich and Sergey Pavlovich's first-round knockout. But Volkov never been knocked out in the UFC before in the first round. The only time he's been knocked out was Derek Lewis, and that was like 11 seconds left on the clock in round 3 in a fight that he was winning. So I don't know that I can really look at this fight and say, yeah, Sergey should probably knock him out round 1. Because Volkov, it's never happened to him before. But I do watch the way that they fight, and I'm like, damn. I think Pavlovich could probably find some openings because Volkov is a tall, long guy. But number one, he's going to be at a reach disadvantage, so I don't think he's going to be able to stay to the outside and pick him apart. Maybe with the teep kicks, but how many teep kicks can you throw before Pavlovich just rushes in there with a bunch of hooks? I don't know. And Volkov, for how tall he is, he doesn't really stay at range with his hands. Usually when he's inside, he'll kind of grab your hands and find openings with either an uppercut, a little hook from the outside, or an elbow or a knee up the middle. So he does most of his work in the pocket. So that's kind of where I struggle. But at the same time, he's never been knocked out in the first round, nor the second round. Only been knocked out once by Derek Lewis with 11 seconds left. I think Volkov's got a great shot to win this fight, but I do think overall, Pavlovich, even if he doesn't win by first round knockout, I don't think he has some terrible gas tank. You watch him on the regional scene, he's won 3 fights by decision, and he actually went 5 rounds with some guy on Fight Nights Global, and he didn't really look like he slowed down. So even if this fight is a slow-paced fight, I think Pavlovich probably just lands the better shots, and maybe just the ability to walk down Volkov as this fight goes on. He wins this fight by a decision. Call me crazy, but I think Pavlovich could low-key win this fight by a decision if he isn't able to knock him out in round 1. Because Volkov's durable, and he's a little bit tough to hit. Pavlovich is the pick. But this is a really, really sketchy one. Big favorite. Really sketchy. Main event. Robert Whittaker, Ikram Aliskerov. Now, earlier in the week, I went with Ikram Aliskerov. Why? Because I look at this and I give him a lot of edges in this fight. I give him a power advantage. I give him a durability advantage. I give him a grappling advantage. The advantages that are on Whittaker's side are the experience, the 5-round cardio. So we don't really know how well Ikram's cardio is. He's gone to a decision, a few times, but ultimately it wasn't like he's pushing some crazy pace. And it didn't really look like he was death gassing, but it starts to slow down. That explosiveness, that power just isn't quite there. Could he grind him out for 5 rounds? I really doubt that Ikram could just grind out on top of him for 5 rounds, because Whittaker is a really good wrestler himself, very good defensive wrestling as well. But I do think Whittaker is going to be live to get KO'd within the first 2 rounds, because Ikram hits hard and he goes for the finish. So if he stuns Whittaker with something, he's going to go for that finish, and he's got really good finishing skills. So this is a really tough one. The experience is on Whittaker's side. He is a small favorite. I think for a pick, you have to go with Whittaker. I know I earlier in the week I went with Ikram, but for a gun to your head pick, I have to go with Whittaker. I have to go with Whittaker just because we have not seen Ikram do it at this level yet. And if he does it on Saturday, then okay. Okay. Then we've seen it, and then we can move on. But this is gun to your head type of picking. I have to go with Whittaker. Because even though he doesn't quite have the finishing skills that he once had, he hasn't had a knockout since 2017. I don't know that he's going to knock out Ikram. But if he can survive those first 2 rounds, then he takes over later in round 3, 4, and 5. And I think he's got a good chance to win this fight. So Robert Whittaker is the pick, but I hate this fight. I hate this fight for a pick, for a betting standpoint. Not to say I won't have a bet on this fight, but, it's a sketchy one. Those are the picks. Stay tuned for the Best Bet show coming out on Friday. I'll give you a money line, a parlay, an over-under, and a prop bet, as well as the DFS plays as well. So stay tuned for that to the channel. Appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Till next time, hey, Jive Picks.